Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Customer service is everything for most businesses that last the distance. Our customer loyalty to a brand or business leader can be shaped by our experiences every day, and sometimes our feedback is heard, noted, and more importantly, positively acted upon, and sometimes, well, it's not, and the results can mean the end of the road for that business if that's a recurrent theme. After all, there's always another airline to fly, another makeup brand to use, or another car that we could buy. My guest today is Winston Tu, the founder and CEO of Luxo Living, Australia's leading online boutique furniture store. He's a trailblazer in the e-commerce sector and has been selling products online since 1999, before the arrival of eBay in Australia. Winston was an early facilitator of groundbreaking customer service tools, including built-in shipping platforms, which saw Luxo Living saving over $300,000 within the first year. As he commemorates 21 years at the helm, Winston has grown Luxo Living into a leading online retailer that boasts an annual turnover of $22 million. It offers impeccably made, comfortable home styling pieces at an attractive price point. The brand has actually used its customer complaints as avenues to pinpoint areas of growth, allowing it to compete against top brand names in its categories such as Amazon, Catch, and Temple & Webster. So I warmly welcome Winston to the Politics of Everything. Welcome.
Thanks, Amber, and thanks for having me on the podcast today.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since 2017, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one web-based solution to make the process quick and painless, the way podcasting should be. If you know me, I'm pretty obsessed with quality guests, quality content, and quality sound, and that's what Zencastr allows me to do. Not to mention, it's really easy to use, even for my guests that aren't particularly tech-savvy. There's nothing to download, they just click on the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-production all in the one tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get each episode done. I want you to have the same great experience that I do for all my podcasts and content needs. So I have a special offer for you. If you go to zen.ai/politics of everything and enter this promo code, you'll get 30% off in your first 3 months when you sign up to Zencastr Pro. That's zen.ai, politics of everything. It's now time to share your story. Excellent. So I want to ask, what did you want it to be when you were a kid? I don't know, was furniture always in your family, or how did you sort of get from, I guess, childhood Winston to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to be in IT, actually, but even, at one stage I wanted to be a programmer, but I was worried about getting RSI at an early age, so...
Oh, it's very sensible of you.
I didn't end up doing that, but I knew I wanted to do something in the IT world.
And did you actually study IT, or what did you do, a degree, or what did you do straight out of school?
No, I didn't actually. I kind of was really into the computers and that during high school, but in uni I decided to do a course in psychology and felt that wasn't really for me. So back into the kind of IT world I went after that.
Excellent. So customer feedback and customer service are obviously very much interlinked. What is your view of each as a valuable way to manage your business, or essentially any business, generally speaking?
Yeah, so I do think, customer feedback is very important, and we use that to shape our customer service offering, our customer support, to improve different areas of the business. So, the customer will tell you, what they want. They'll tell you what they don't like about you. Sometimes they'll tell you what they do like about the business. I think you need to take both, the positives and the negatives. And that's really going to drive change in the business to improve the customer service, give the feedback to the teams, to train the teams on what to do, what the customer wants.
And how many people are actually working in your business in that sort of customer-facing role? I mean, how much of that is that a part of what you do?
Yeah, at any time we have about 15 to 20 people in the customer service and support teams.
Yeah, so it's a reasonable number of people. And I guess the question I have for you is, it's kind of a bit loaded, but, the idea that customer is always right. I mean, that's not always true, I guess. And so how do you manage, I guess, expectation versus the reality of running a business? Because obviously feedback is important, but not every piece of feedback might necessarily be something which leads to a massive change in the business.
Yeah, I agree. The customer's not always right. I mean, look, we deal with the general public. So out there, you've got people with different opinions, different values, different views on things. So, yeah, if someone believes X and someone else believes Y, they can't both be right. But some of them are right. And even if they're not, we don't want to argue with them. We want to still take their feedback on board to reduce the number of complaints, because the goal really is to not get the complaint from the customer, and whatever we can do to reduce that is going to be good for the business.
And I imagine sometimes, silence equals satisfaction. I know every time I have a great experience, I'm not necessarily giving that business feedback. It seems like the complaint box is usually more full than the compliments box. Is that your experience, or does it sort of depend on particular products that you're offering?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely easier to get the complaints. They seem to be the more motivated ones to kind of go online now and give their feedback.
Keyboard
But
warriors.
yeah, especially now that you don't need to show your face, with the online world, social media, that kind of thing. So it is easy to get complaints, and I think it's good to get complaints. Not too many, of course, but the complaints become useful if we do something about it. But it's also good to get the compliments, and when we, let's say, have a team meeting or something, we'll start with a few compliments and say, look, this is what we're doing well, and then jump into the complaints to see, okay, what needs to be improved.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. And it's good that you have that open discussion, because I guess within your team, people can learn from that as well, so that you're not duplicating, similar issues in a siloed way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a key point that you mentioned there, which is you got to learn from it. So, get the complaint, learn from it, talk to the customer. And it's always, comes down to communication. A lot of the customer service training that we give our teams is about how to communicate with the customer, what to say, respond quickly, obviously be professional and polite. It comes down to those basics. The customer really wants to know what's going on. I mean, issues always happen, whether it's in business or in life. There's always going to be problems here and there. It's never going to be a perfect world. So, but when the issues do occur, it comes down to the communication, how that happens with the customer.
Absolutely. So I want you to share with us an experience which I've been privy to just in preparation for today's conversation. Christmas Eve 2021 is a day that you will never forget. Tell us more what happened on that day, and I guess what it meant for the business in terms of managing customer complaints. Of course, being mindful is the day before Christmas, and tensions in retail are usually very high. And I guess what you sort of allowed you to do in the business and maybe improve even the bottom line as a result.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it wasn't a good experience, but it's definitely
Memorable.
a day we would not forget. That's right. So, yeah, we found out through friends, actually, who saw on social media. So the Department of Fair Trading in New South Wales issued a public warning about our company due to the number of customer complaints that we had. So it was a bit of a shock, and it came at a very bad time, because normally in this situation, we'd try to contact them, talk to them, and, maybe even argue and say, look, what's going on? Because we had sent them all the information they requested, the statistics and all that kind of thing. Didn't get any response, but this warning came out on Christmas Eve, and it was impossible to contact anyone. So it was kind of a very challenging situation for us, and people who were on leave. It was still kind of lockdown time, I remember at that time. So we were not able to get hold of anyone for weeks into January. But what it did for us is to kind of really start a project to turn around our customer service teams, our systems, to implement new systems, to deal with complaints quicker, to be able to resolve the complaints quicker, to retrain and restructure our teams who deal with the customers, so that we can give a much better customer experience. So that did really turbocharge and fast track that. We already had some things being implemented, but that kind of sparked that extra attention and focus on that area, which, in the end, we had from February a, Google rating of 3.5. And 2 months later, we were at 4.3, which is we've been able to keep that till today.
And obviously maybe it helped, I guess, make more money at the end of the day because you could then address the pain points quicker.
Absolutely. I mean, a happy customer is going to tell their friends and bring more customers. And it's one of the best forms of advertising in business. So definitely.
Customer complaints, obviously, from the experience you've just shared, can unravel some of the kind of teething issues, which you may not even be aware of because, you're just in the business and you're obviously the leader at the business. And while you might have conversations weekly with staff, you're not maybe every day dealing with customers. Allowing you to maybe even curate what you stock. I imagine, there's some lines which people love, some which they don't. Online sales has obviously allowed, I guess, the pace of purchasing to be quicker, and particularly in the last couple of years with lockdowns, online sales were the only way we could buy products and services. Do you think that's made it easier or harder to navigate customer complaints? And is it probably a memory you have perhaps when you first started the business, pre everyone being online all the time, where you think it maybe was better or worse? I mean, how would you sort of compare that evolution in the past 21 years or so that you've been part of Luxo Living?
Yeah, I think technology and the internet has made it easier to track all these things. I mean, there's systems to, track number of complaints, reviews, compliments, almost in real time. You can get alerts and so forth, plus the stats. Like you can get stats a lot easier to gather the data on which products may be causing issues, or if there's certain issue with a product. Just to give you an example, let's say there's a product and it could be let's say a timber bed, and we're getting a number of complaints that there's missing screws in the packaging, for example. We can easily calculate a percentage of this type of issue, and if that goes above a certain level, we'll actually stop selling the product and work on the improvements, whether we need to even open boxes here in the warehouse, add parts or screws in there before we send out to customers. We'll do that. We'll stop the sales in the meantime so we don't get more complaints. We'll work with the manufacturer to implement some improvements on their end, which could be, it could be a change of staff, or it could be, adding a checklist to their production line process, right? So that they fill out a checklist that someone's responsible for adding the parts in. It could be things like that, and little things that could make a big difference. And if we do all this stuff and if it still doesn't improve the complaint rate, or claim rate, as we call it, then we could decide to discontinue that product.
So your systems obviously have to be excellent so customer feedback can actually drive this change. Are there any sort of tools and I guess must-haves that you think make your business sing a little bit when it comes to this stuff?
Yes, I think a review management system is crucial, and there's a few out there, to know as soon as possible when there is a complaint. The tracking of the complaints, such as using a tool like Zendesk, which has a ticket-based system with reporting dashboard, so we can see like which cases are taking a bit longer to resolve. We can see stats on that, and we can work on targets for reducing that kind of average time to resolve cases. That's definitely going to help. And then we have our own systems and tools that we've created to drive the change and improvements back to the sourcing and procurement side of things.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess over time as well, you've probably evolved what you use, and it hasn't been the same all the way along.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and we have to constantly improve things. I mean, something that works, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, 1 year ago, might not work very well right now. So, obviously we keep the things that work, but improve the ones that don't work or have stopped working due to the change in time, or things that need improvement. These tools need to be updated as well.
Absolutely. So changing tack a little bit, I always ask my guests a couple of questions, and I'm going to obviously ask you these ones as well today. Who have been your most important career or life mentors, maybe one or two, and what have they taught you along the way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm kind of like the person who If I need to learn something, let's say I want to learn more about customer service or improve our customer service, I'll look for people who are experts in that. It could be just through a book. It could be, now there's a lot of online things like YouTube and so forth, but there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge in books that are a lot more detailed in most cases. But, in terms of, let's say, motivation, I think Tony Robbins is a good one. Like, always gets me fired up and really good with the motivation. And I heard, I remember that he says, or it could be his mentor, I think Jim Rohn, who used to say, education comes before motivation. But the motivation could argue the other way. You have to be motivated. You've got to have energy to be able to even learn. So
absolutely. I think they're symbiotic, I suppose, to be successful.
Yeah, you can look at it both ways, right?
If we spoke again in a year's time, what would be your number one goal that you have hoped to have achieved? And perhaps that's in your business or it could be personally, and why?
Yeah, I think in the business, our goal is to really have a higher customer service rating than our competitors. And that's, we're still on that path to.
You want 5 out of 5.
Yeah,
Every time.
Let's go. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess you're going to make plans of how you're going to do that, and we can check back in with you and find out how that evolved. So a final takeaway message for us today on the politics of customer feedback for anyone listening out there who's perhaps wrestling with some of the challenges that you've experienced.
Sure. Look, I think you mentioned before, the customer is not always right, but we should always take the customer feedback and learn and try to improve something based on that. Whether it's good feedback or bad feedback, there's always a lesson in there if we look for it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to chat to you today, Winston. If you do want to connect with Winston Tu or find out more about Luxo Living's offerings, there will be some details on the show notes. Until next time, take care. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.